What's up, YouTube? I'm your host, Static, and welcome to Static History. I'm creating this channel with the intent of condensing and consolidating the findings of my open source research channel, Static in the Attic. Where Static in the Attic is more stream of consciousness, leave no stone unturned effort to expose the lies we are sold, this channel was created to share those findings much more concisely in documentary format with hopefully a greater impact. So if you would like to see how I came to the conclusion seen here, there's a link to that channel in the description box below. Of course, all source information contained in this video will be there as well. In a nutshell, what I've uncovered so far is that 1. We don't have a continuous, reliable history dating back more than a couple hundred years. Then beyond that, it becomes, quote, comparative histories that are heavily edited and extremely biased. Now, if you consider the spin on events of just 20 years ago, then it's not much of a leap to imagine how skewed the accounts may be of 10 generations ago and beyond. 2, we have not only the archaeological evidence, but also obscure, hard-to-find textual evidence that cataclysmic events, known commonly as the Mudflood, have not only occurred, but have played an important role in shaping the events of our society. 3rd, and most importantly, we have evidence all around the world suggesting that there was once a technologically advanced worldwide civilization that tackled feats of engineering that we can't replicate with our modern so-called advanced technology today. So for the sake of prosperity and in the spirit of thoroughness, I am beginning with pandemics. Why diseases? Because quackademia has little to no evidence supporting mass die-offs due to infectious disease, but these have been instrumental in shaping European history and the alleged conquest of the Americas. So let's look at the facts. This new study is so monumentally huge in explaining to people that our history may be nothing more than a set of stories that a few people at the top would like you to believe is the history of the human race, because this is mainstream academic scholars confirming what I have been saying all along, that there is no archaeological evidence whatsoever to back up the claims of these major plagues and their importance in the unfolding of history as we know it. The Justinian plague supposedly killed 50 million people. The world population at that time, 500 AD, was approximately 190 million people. So if every single person on the face of the earth contracted the plague, which is highly unlikely, then that is a 25% mortality rate. Now, I've been wanting to blow this plague epidemic out of the water for so long. It's been killing me. So we'll get to the study in a minute. First, I'm going to share my research with you guys and the way that I have looked at this for a long time. Now, according to MPH Online, I have got the 10 worst pandemics in history. Let's go through those real quick. First is the AIDS HIV pandemic, which I'm not really going to get too much onto. If you really look into it, they give you a lot of mumbo jumbo saying most people who die from HIV and AIDS do not die from the virus itself, but rather from the so-called opportunistic infections which take advantage of a weak immune system. And then they go on to say that it was a 33% less mortality rate last year, and so on and so forth. So it gets kind of convoluted. So let's skip to number 2. The flu pandemic of 1968. This is the Hong Kong flu pandemic. In comparison to other pandemics, the Hong Kong flu yielded a low death rate with a case fatality ratio between 0.5%, making it a category 2 disease on the pandemic severity index. Now, what I'm doing is making a case study that no pandemic has reached anywhere near the numbers that we are giving for our official history. Next up on the list is the Asian flu of 1956 to 1958. Symptoms were mostly mild and patients usually recovered after a period in bed with simple antipyretic measures. There were complications in 3% of cases with a 0.3% mortality. 0.3%. The very well-known Spanish flu pandemic of 1918 and 1919, the mortality rate is not known, but is estimated that 10 to 20% of those who were infected died. So that one is pretty high percentage-wise out of all of these. The flu pandemic of 1890, because of pneumonia affecting people suffering from influenza, the mortality rate reached 10.96 per 1 million people. So, guys, none of these pandemics have anything like what we're being told for the official history. Now, let's go through the choleras real quick, because the next one on the list is the third cholera pandemic, 1852 to 1860. As far as all of the cholera pandemics are concerned, cholera is spread mostly by unsafe water and unsafe food that's been contaminated with human feces containing the bacteria. The risk of death among those affected is usually less than 5%, but may be as high as 50%. So they've got a pretty wide range there. But if you go to the CDC website, they say most persons infected with the cholera bacterium have mild diarrhea or no symptoms at all. Only a small proportion, about 5 to 10% of persons infected with Vibrio cholerae, may have illness requiring treatment at a health center. 5 to 10% of all people that contract cholera may need to go see the doctor. That is it. Now, also, in case you can't make it to the hospital, they say that homemade ORSs are effective, and ORS is an oral rehydration solution. And you can make this at home if you have the alchemical wizardry to take a cup of water and mix in a half teaspoon of salt and a half teaspoon of sugar. It's the exact same thing that I gave my buddy Zach on the trail when he got dehydrated and we're 20 miles away from civilization backpacking. It's pretty simple. You just have to rehydrate to get through cholera. And now for the really big one, the Black Death, where they say 75 to 200 million people died between 1346 and 1353. Now, I'll leave this in the links. I already did a video called Mudflood, Comets, and Volcanoes, Oh My, where I went into great detail explaining that in 1348 came an earthquake of such frightful violence that many men deemed the end of the world to be presaged. Its devastations were widely spread. Cyprus, Greece, and Italy were terribly visited, and it extended through the Alpine valleys as far as Basel. Mountains sank into the earth. In Carinthia, 30 villages in the Tower of Valache were ruined. The air grew thick and stifling. There were dense and frightful fogs. Wine fermented in the casks. Fiery meteors appeared in the skies. A gigantic pillar of flame was seen by hundreds descending upon the roof of the Pope's palace at Avignon. In 1356 came another earthquake which destroyed almost the whole of Basel. What with famine, flood, fog, locust swarms, earthquakes, and the like, it's not surprising that many men deem the cup of the world's sins to be full and the end of the kingdom of man to be at hand. Here I think I've done a good job of illustrating that we have a competing history that is saying that there's some type of cataclysmic event that happened and that it wasn't just a bacterial infection. Now, as far as the mortality rates of all of these go, some people might try to use the argument that nowadays we have better antibiotics to get rid of the diseases, but you have to keep in mind that antibiotics don't do anything for a virus. So I've questioned for a long time the validity of the claim that the plague wiped out large portions of the population because there's no archaeological evidence to back it up. And now mainstream academia is backing up my claim on that. And guys, we're talking about the fall of the Roman Empire. The Justinian plague was supposed to have been the straw that broke the camel's back for the Roman Empire. let's get into this article. Plague is often depicted as shifting the course of human history, but scholars say an outbreak that has been blamed for the demise of the Roman Empire likely didn't kill half the world's population in just a few years. A new study published Monday explores the effects of the first recorded plague pandemic, known as the Justinian Plague, that was thought to have swept through the world starting from the year 541. Many scholars believe the outbreak was a landmark event that led to significant demographic, economic, and political changes in the period known as late antiquity, much as the Black Death devastated Europe in the Middle Ages. Wink, wink. If this plague was a key moment in human history that killed between a third and a half of the population of the Mediterranean world in just a few years, as is often claimed, we should have evidence for it, but our survey of data sets found none, said Lee Mordecai, a postdoctoral fellow at the University of Maryland's National Socio-Environmental Synthesis Center. An international team of historians looked at the diverse range of data to investigate the effects of the outbreak, including historical text, coin circulation, burial practices, pollen samples, stone inscriptions, mortuary archaeology, and plague genomes. They found that the number of deaths caused by the outbreak may have been overestimated, and the plague did not play a significant role in the transformation of the Mediterranean world of Europe. It also didn't play a key role in the fall of the Roman Empire. Then they had the audacity to go forward saying extraordinary claims demand extraordinary evidence. We find little evidential support for the claim that the Justinian Plague was a watershed event. The author said previous scholars focused on the most evocative written accounts, applying them to other places in the Mediterranean world while ignoring hundreds of contemporary texts that did not mention the Justinian Plague. They also say that unlike during the Black Death, when the vast number of people killed by the plague resulted in mass graves, the team found no significant evidence that the numbers of graves containing more than one person increased during the Justinian period. Now, I just gave a differing account of the Black Death time frame to where it showed cataclysms and not a viral infection. They also say that we investigated a large data set of human burials from before and after the plague outbreak, and the plague did not result in a significant change whether people buried the dead alone or with many others. They finish by saying it's easy to assume infectious diseases in the past would have catastrophic results, yet we used every type of data set we could get our hands on without assuming a disease outbreak must result in catastrophic results, i.e., that tens of millions died. We found no evidence in any of these data sets to suggest such a destructive outcome. So like I said at the beginning of the video, this is extremely important in debunking the official story that we are given, especially when it comes to the so-called conquest of the Americas, where a couple of Spanish conquistadors come over here, sneeze, and wipe out tens of millions of people in the native populations. But when you get down and actually look at case studies of measles and smallpox, you'll find that deaths from measles was reported in approximately 0.2% of the cases in the United States from 1995 to 1992. And as far as the mortality rate of smallpox goes, two forms of the disease are recognized. Variola minor with a mortality rate of approximately 1%, and the more common variola major with a mortality rate of 30%. So you are talking if every single person in the Americas contracted smallpox, that only 3 out of 10 would have died from that. That in no way accounts for the millions of people that we are told died from disease. So the static history lesson of the day is this. We have little to no archaeological evidence to support mass die-offs in the past due to disease, and by looking at modern pandemics, we have no known virus or bacteria with a mortality rate anywhere close to historical accounts. Just a few historians that say it happened that way because I said it happened that way. Guys, if you enjoyed the video, please like and share with your friends. Leave a comment and tell me what you think, and make sure you're subscribed and hit the notification bell so you can come along for the ride as we piece together the static residue of our true past. Static out. Society is getting heavy. I can feel the weight. The pressure of success is like 100 million.